We got theme music.
Oh, nice.
Someone's watching me, Jerry.
Yeah.
So that's a cry for help.
Okay.
If you can think of like a better.
You know, a yawn is a silent cry for coffee.
So this is our silent cry for a theme song, and
Okay.
I know you are a music aficionado. Peter Green, and you might have a Peter Green story if we get into this. But first, name, rank, and serial number.
Yeah.
Introduce yourself and why you're here.
Jerry Glowka. I'm owner of a company called AIE Consulting Inc. And what I do is I do open source intelligence and external threat cybersecurity.
Very cool.
Nice.
What, without being obvious of the trail there, what brings you to BSides?
Really, one of my things I do with my company is I look at new technologies. So I'm always interested in the trends and where the technology is going. So, and also to meet with the vendors and see what's available, what's new, etc.
So you toured the floor. What's catching your eye at BSides 2023?
Yeah, it's good stuff. I was over at the Fortinet booth talking about some of their newer stuff. And some very good presentations. I sat in on some of those. I learned a lot on some new algorithms and
looking into AI and
That's right.
we just did a podcast with Peter Smetny right before
yeah.
you.
Good guy, Peter.
Good guy, good hair,
Yeah,
right?
Good dancer, actually.
Yeah.
I've seen him. He's a pretty good disco dancer, Peter. Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
He did not bring that up.
He did not.
He did
Oh,
not
he
bring
did
that
not?
up.
Oh,
Well,
I've
that's
seen him in
another-
his John Travolta suit.
Okay, I'm
He's pretty good at it.
That's a
I'll
follow
have a
up.
follow-up, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay.
So any BSides versus your traditional conferences in Ottawa? Contrast to compare, like what's cool?
Yeah, I like it. It's more casual for one thing. I like that. It's a good group of people, and it's nice to get together with them every year. And
You're just talking about us right now.
that's
Yeah.
you and everyone out there has been pretty good. Yeah.
Coolio.
Yeah. So it's been good. I've enjoyed the show this year.
Awesome.
I'm gonna pivot it up. You're a bit of a legend around these parts. So I want the origin story. Like in the beginning, how did you get into cyber, and how did you get to where you are now?
So I've been working in cyber for about 20 years, and I started with simple firewalls. And in fact, I brought the first Fortinet to Canada years back. Then actually became a distributor for Fortinet.
You predate Peter Smetny?
I do. In fact, I knew Peter before he worked at Fortinet. So
Very
he worked
cool.
with the company I worked with at Nixon. So,
Okay.
but yeah, so yeah, I was very familiar with Fortinet and partnered up with quite a few of the people in the industry. So Bell Canada and at the time Zentra, IBM, a few others. And then after a certain few years, they asked me if I would like to go solo and sell it direct to the clients. I told everybody I'd give them 2 years, and then I
Right.
so became really proficient in firewalls, and then went on to big data analytics and did some projects there, and that took me to the next generation, which was really OSINT data collection
Oh, wow.
and external source.
So you're like, if I'm to do the Jerry biography, you're just chasing the next thing.
I'm always looking for the next thing, and lately, because of I'm very familiar with the internal security, it's the external now that's really important. So there's a focus really on who's doing what where. So a lot of my platforms involve access to the deep and dark web, chat rooms, to the marketplaces, and the understanding of.
So tell me about that, Jerry, because so I'm a security guy and I'm in a SOC and my head's down and I'm defense in depth and I'm on-prem and I'm legacy. I get it, but what's the pivot there with the kind of outside in? Like, what's the payoff? What's the difference and what's the payoff?
Well, I think to start with, to understand what the external is, the surface scan of your environment, who can see what, and even now with the advent of DevOps, there's a lot of vulnerabilities in libraries, and they can exploit those. So really, whatever is visible. So doing a surface scan, but even more important is what's trending. So like in vulnerabilities. So what we do is we have some really interesting technologies that are monitoring the chat rooms of who's doing what.
Who's using what?
Who's doing what and what's working and
Yeah.
what industry. And then we add a little bit of AI to that, saying that, okay, if you have potentially you might have several thousand patches to do, where do you start?
It's like a hacker social media site. If I want to be a hacker and hang out, what tools are you guys using? What's popular? What's working?
Exactly, and you know what's selling in the marketplace.
Right, because the dark web's a liquid marketplace, and they've got stats.
And then they also are monitoring across the world. So if they're attacking a bank in Paris and then a bank in the UK, it's pretty likely they're going to be coming to Canada next. So we could basically say, you know, if you're a bank in Canada, these are the top 3 things you should be doing right now. So it's going to be.
You know what I like about that, as a traditional guy inside, is they always say, you go into a department or a company, you got to understand their threat posture. Like, who are the bad guys? Why do they want to get you?
That's right.
And so you build up this thesis and these use cases. I go, or I could go to what's trending and go, if you're a bank, it's probably these guys, and it's probably using those, just because there's momentum.
Yeah, and I also work a lot with the government agencies that do counterterrorism and fraud detection and things like that. So it also allows you to do search out, pivot, and
find interesting people in interesting places.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
If I'm starting cyber now, like this, you know, back how you would do cyber back then, we just got into that defense in depth and firewalls versus AI and external views. If you were starting into cyber now, and there's folks out there with newly minted degrees, or just they're interested, recommendations on how to crack the lineup, and if you had to have one skill that would get you through the day in cyber, what would it be?
Well, I kind of like, there's a fellow in the next booth here, JP, and Hack the Box. I think that's a very good way to start. It gives you online access to, you know, beginners, intermediate, and then experts, and it's fairly inexpensive. And I think one of the things about cyber is to know how to protect, you should know how they're attacking. So it's kind of the red team, blue team, purple team, if you will.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, that's a new one on me. Like Steve and JF and people like that are going, Carl, it's this whole capture the flag thing. You're confusing red team and blue team as pen testers and kind of incident response defenders. They're the same people.
Yeah.
You just like the capture the flag game, you switch, right? You defend the flag once, but then the very reason you want to get better at that is you got to switch and be on offense.
So, and there's a lot of good training online, OSINT training. There's
Good point.
several 4 or 5 hour. One of the big things that I'm amazed that people aren't monitoring their credentials on the dark web and the marketplaces is some of my technologies will just look at what's available today in the world of credentials, and the credentials with passwords. It's crazy. They're just there for $10 a pop. So,
it's nuts.
so I think people should be aware of that, and you know, we have the ability actually to purchase those and take them off the market with some of our folks in the background are constantly monitoring. So you can take those credentials offline, but you can also buy them just so they're not available, which is interesting.
So is that, like, with the people that you're working with, do you guys routinely, like, diffuse those kind of situations? Like, do they frequently take those credentials down, like buy the credentials?
Takedowns, yes, absolutely.
Wow.
Some of our vendors will actually do monitor VIPs and et cetera. So they're monitoring their
I like where
not
you're
only
going, right?
their identity, but also their.
He's doing the NIST cycle on you, right? It's
Well,
all cool to protect the tech, but you got to remediate, right?
Yeah, and that's just like something from like deception technology for like the honeypots inside, or the dark web monitoring on the outside. Like monitoring, like Carl said, monitoring's great, but like, is anything happening? Like, 'cause I know that, you know, occasionally a law enforcement agency will take something down, but like, from a vendor perspective, if they were to do something like that, would that be kind of impeding law enforcement? Or
Yeah, there are certain rules for sure.
That's a good point.
There are some rules, but suffice it to say, if you have the ability to know that your credentials are are being sold online, and
I can take down my own, sure, but I can't do it for anybody else, really.
Right.
No, that's correct.
Or I may be talking about myself, but sometimes you get called and told you got hacked, but we want you to leave those things up because they're very
Right.
they're very
Yeah.
useful, natural
Right.
canary deception technology.
Mm.
So it's not for me to take it down, right?
Right.
So, I just did for one agency. I just did a scan before I did a talk. I found 10 credentials with passwords. I gave them to the head person at the presentation, and he was pretty shocked because they were legitimate. They were his and two of his.
Oh, wow.
What a great
associates.
sales
Yeah.
pretext.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't know if you want to do business with me, but here's what I found. I bet you.
So, you know, what do? You certainly change your password, but you know, the takedown. You know, they charge $15 for this to take it off.
That's reasonable.
Off. Yeah, it's not expensive, but you have to do it with Bitcoin and.
I
Oh,
also
So we do. Our people actually transact those Bitcoin things. It's a
Okay.
service, mind you.
I want that recurring, right? Because it's like BA
Yeah.
scans or everything else. Is
Yes.
you got to be periodic, right? And go. You went
Yes.
out in the dark web and you shut down all your little credentials.
Well,
like,
you could set up just a scan, a daily, an hourly scan. Yeah, there's, you know,
Very
once
cool.
you have the tool.
Hmm.
So at the end of the day, you see, and you can be alerted by email or text that you know you have a new credential online. But there's some companies I work with actually do full scale audit of the VIPs of the industry, so they
Mhm.
monitor them.
Yeah.
And often they might go over to Europe or something, and that's when they become actually physical targets too. So
Right. Yeah.
some of my products actually are in the physical realm, where we can do fencing, or we could put a bounding area around. Maybe there's a protest somewhere. Parliament is a good example. You could put a 6-block bounding area around it.
right?
Extract all the social media, then run AI sentiment and find the angry people. And then once you have those, you can pivot to the tool set to see if they have aliases,
Very
and then
cool.
pivot again and find out who they are.
I like the whole my thing about sentiment analysis is if you do one on Trump, it's all toxic, right? Yours is an anomaly detector of, yeah, there's some angry people, but where's the really angry people relative to
And who are they, and
are they
you know,
broadcasters or where are they?
And so it's a series of different tool sets, but they're all integrated into a single platform for the analyst to really act quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That's crazy.
and,
Also in geo real time, like
Right.
the whole thing about a protest that's well organized is people are moving around, right? And they're blocking off choke points, and the police are counter moving, and they're pivoting, they're going down Elgin Street.
Right.
You gotta.
And you can also monitor where the next spot is.
Right.
They'll say, okay.
I know where they're going,
Yeah.
right? They're going to the bridge.
In fact, these technologies are actually being used in Ukraine right now with the HIMARS systems.
Wow.
They're actually part of the deployment where the missiles come with these technologies. So you can just put a bounding area around a certain countryside and find out where there's a cluster of social media, which they're not supposed to, but they do.
Yeah.
They're calling home.
Wow.
So it's pretty effective in that way.
Mm.
But here in town, like even for things like G7 summit and things like that, you can find sentiment if there are protests. How angry are they?
Mm-hmm.
Do you need to bring more troops in or more police in?
So what is the sentiment? Like someone could be super angry but harmless.
Right.
Sure.
Someone could be
absolutely.
very cold and deadly, right? Like is that like? So I guess like your the sentiment is just kind of the like we mentioned in the last talk. It's a lead. It's the beginning. It's not where you make your decision. It's just where you know. Okay, now I can go down a path.
So when we had the Freedom event at the Parliament, I think it was last year,
Mhm.
I believe it. It just so happens I was doing a presentation on the geospatial, and we put it around, right, the crew. Now, mind you, in 6 blocks, we picked up 25,000 social media because we pick up everything,
Mm-hmm.
but geolocation, and then we ran sentiment, and that reduced it to 430, which if you remember, down to the second day, there were 430 people
Mhm.
left.
Right.
And 200 went home and 200 were arrested. But it gives you kind of really good intelligence into what's happening on the ground. And, so that's part of the platforms that I offer. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Interesting. Can
Plus-
I get a demo or
Yeah,
like
what's
a,
going on?
can I get a demo or like NFR licensing or something to play with?
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
or-
absolutely. Yeah,
What I love, I work with Jerry on some of those, because it's almost like a CISO or a security architecture's toolkit on the way in. All these things that he's got, I can go, you try before buy, but I've already worked them for you. And so like we, not bespoke, but here, we did
The surface scan is a good point.
because you want to add value on the way in, right?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
convince them you can fix their problems, but if you walk in with this kind of payload, I find it really.
I did that with attack surface management at another company, where we do the data was already there. We would just do let's pull it into a dashboard,
Right.
and then show you stuff that you don't want to see.
Right, and we can do that in 15 minutes. And
Mhm.
we show you what the hackers are looking at anyways.
Yeah, the time to value.
Yeah.
That's what time to value
Now,
is quite
some
awesome.
some of the criticals are maybe not so critical, but
Right.
you then can decide, really.
Yeah, like you have to know what's
Yeah.
there before you
Yeah.
because there's especially from an external perspective,
Mhm.
stuff changes hands so many times over
Right.
the years,
Right.
and I didn't know that I had that domain name, just sitting there,
Right.
and it was actually
That's actually
you
a
know,
good point because
and now it's hijacked kind of thing,
Right.
there's a lot of orphan accounts out there as well.
Right.
Mhm.
So I know that I've done some work with some agencies, and there might be as many as 40,000 orphan accounts because
Mm.
nobody knows everybody, and they don't want to shut it down because maybe they're just out on holidays or whatever.
Hmm.
This is something that Steve's last time he was at BSides, he actually did a presentation. I might have hijacked it, but that's beside the point. He talked about OODA loops and discovery, right? That you whether you did a VA scan or an attack service, that was then, but
Mhm.
it's 6 months later, and you've added and changed and subtracted devices. So if
Right.
you don't know what you don't know,
Mhm.
Right.
and I think I don't quote me, around 60 or 80% of ransomware attacks
Mhm.
are on unknown, unmanaged devices. So it's the ones that you left in orphan that people go, oh, look at that.
That
Right.
makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And, the other thing we do is we do some proprietary vulnerability assessments where, I guess the common places you go, the free places that have the CVEs, are often short on the older ones. So,
Hmm.
but there's still in some SCADA systems you might still have Windows 7 operating.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
there's vulnerabilities that they just don't bother with because they assume nobody's using
Right.
those. So those are another thing that we offer is about 100,000 extra CVEs than
Nice.
the NIST and the other one. So
Okay.
yeah, plus a little bit of AI looking at what's going on
Mhm.
because it's correlated with the marketplace and who's
Yeah.
doing what. So,
Well, and with the CVE, CVE is great,
yeah,
but if it's not being exploited,
right.
your risk is so much lower, right? Like your probability goes down, so then
Mhm.
then maybe the impact is high, but your risk score is still going to be a little bit lower. So that's where your AI can say, okay,
Right.
or even just automated systems saying, I can look on GitHub to see if I find any exploit code or any POC or anything like that, or
Right.
Twitter, because generally if there's a POC for, hey, I've got this new exploit proof of concept,
Wow, that's a
and
cool.
people post to Twitter.
You're almost doing internal betting. You know what I mean by use the AI
It's a
to
risk,
go.
yeah, it's a risk.
I want prop bets inside my thing on what are the odds it's code? What are the odds it's GitHub? What are the odds it's Jenkins? I get these are the risks, but what's the probability that something's going on there?
Well, that's why, I'm a former Tenable guy, right? So,
Right.
in their priority rating, part of the things they were looking at, they used intelligence or they used their own labs, can we exploit it? What's the probability of it being exploited? Is it being actively exploited? Is anyone actively attacking it? That's all kind of stuff that says CBSS could be critical, but no one cares about it at this moment.
Right.
Therefore, don't address it right now. But there is active exploit code out for this, right? So patch this now.
And that's part of what the AI does. It says
Yeah,
right.
what's operating today,
Mm-hmm.
and in what capacity and what industry actually. So because
Nice.
they're targeting different industries.
Yeah.
And
And
then-
that's that business context,
And
which
for
is great.
our government and the APTs as well. What are they using today? And
Mhm.
what's going on? So
Nice.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's
Cool.
kind of interesting to see it develop. And they've just added some new things on SBOMs, which are
Yeah.
software bill of materials.
Yeah.
And that's becoming very important.
It's not about you, it's about your suppliers and their
Exactly,
suppliers.
and the libraries that you're building
Yeah.
your applications on, there may be new vulnerability, and if it's a serious one, where are those? What firmware and what version?
Yeah.
Do you have asset management? Do you know
Yeah, exactly.
even like things like set tops for
Mhm.
telcos?
Yeah.
Mr. GoPro's hitting 20, so I wanted to close, like, the last guy we talked to, the pen test guy, he wrestled a bear. Do you, in addition to your cyber skills, any bear handling skills you care to tell us about, Jerry?
I've been chased by one in Yellowstone Park, which was interesting, and
Did it involve a picnic basket?
no.
No, it's not a cartoon you're referring to, right?
But I did ask after that experience, I asked the ranger, did he have like any good bear stories? He shook his head. He said, "Some people are so stupid." And he told me about a time where a guy was pushing a grizzly into his Winnebago to get a picture, and
Oh, because the light's better inside, right?
yeah, and like the bear was just looking at him confused, like, "What are you doing?" I'm a grizzly bear. Don't you understand?
Don't you
this?"
know who I am?
Oh gosh, yeah. So yeah, that's my bear story.
That is
Fantastic.
okay. That's a great close.
Okay, good.
How do you think we're doing? Are we getting better with the segues and the
It's
bear
good.
things?
It's very nice.
Yeah.